Nobody's watching you right now. There is no audience, no performance, no pressure to sound impressive, no need to explain yourself. And yet, when you're alone, something happens in your mind that doesn't happen in most people's minds. Not louder thoughts, not more thoughts, but a different kind of thought. Because real intelligence is not always visible in public. It doesn't always show up as quick answers, big achievements, or perfect confidence. Sometimes it shows up in private, in the quiet habits of your inner life, in the things you do when no one is there to reward you for them. If this video made you see yourself differently, subscribe, because the next one will go even deeper. And if you do these 6 things alone, your intelligence may be far rarer than you think. The first sign is that you can sit with uncertainty longer than other people. Most people feel uncomfortable when they don't have an answer, so they rush. They grab the first explanation that feels stable, the first opinion that sounds certain, the first conclusion that gives them relief. But you don't always do that. When something doesn't make sense, you stay with it. You turn it around in your mind. You let the question stay open longer than is emotionally comfortable. Not because you enjoy confusion, but because part of you knows that premature certainty is often just disguised fear. That matters more than people realize. Research has found that tolerance of ambiguity is positively associated with intelligence, suggesting that people who can handle uncertainty without rushing to closure may be thinking in a deeper, more adaptive way. The second sign is that you argue against your own beliefs when you're alone. Most people don't test their beliefs, they protect them. They look for evidence that confirms what they already think. They defend conclusions that feel emotionally familiar. And once an opinion becomes part of identity, changing it can feel like losing something. But you do something different. You challenge yourself. You replay your own reasoning. You ask, what if I'm wrong? You imagine the stronger argument against your own position, even when no one is forcing you to. That is not weakness. That is not indecision. That is a form of cognitive honesty. Psychologists use the term actively open-minded thinking for this tendency, a willingness to consider alternative views, stay sensitive to contradictory evidence, and postpone closure long enough to think clearly. The third sign is that you don't just feel your emotions, you study them. A lot of people experience emotion as a wave that takes over the room. They feel irritated, withdrawn, restless, heavy, or anxious, and that's where the process ends. But when you're alone, you often go further. You notice patterns. You try to name the exact texture of what you're feeling. You ask whether you're actually sad or disappointed, whether you're angry or overstimulated, whether you're tired or emotionally overloaded. That kind of inner observation is not overanalysis, it's awareness. Research on emotional granularity shows that people who can make finer distinctions between emotions often regulate themselves more effectively and rely less on maladaptive coping. In other words, being precise about what you feel can be a strength, not a burden, and this is where a lot of people have misunderstood you. Maybe you've been told that you think too much, that you're too deep, too quiet, too in your head, too analytical for your own good. But sometimes what people call overthinking is actually something more refined. Sometimes it's not dysfunction. Sometimes it's sophisticated cognition happening without an audience. Because the modern world tends to reward speed, certainty, confidence, and noise, it does not always know what to do with a mind that pauses, reflects, revises, and observes, so it labels that mind as complicated. But complicated is not the same thing as broken. The fourth sign is that you revisit old memories and extract new meaning from them. Most people think of memory as storage, something fixed, a file you open and close. But for you, the past is more alive than that. You return to moments you thought you understood years ago, and suddenly they mean something different. A conversation sounds different now. A rejection reveals a lesson you couldn't see before. An old version of yourself becomes easier to forgive. You are not just remembering, you are reinterpreting. And that ability matters because intelligence is not only about absorbing information, it is also about updating meaning, about letting experience become insight, about refusing to let your past stay shallow when it could become wisdom. The fifth sign is that you get curious about things that offer no obvious reward, no status, no money, no practical outcome, no applause. You read about something because it fascinates you. You follow an idea because it bothers you not to understand it. You go down mental paths that don't lead anywhere useful on paper, but still feel meaningful to explore. That kind of curiosity is rare. Research describes intrinsic motivation as the spontaneous tendency to seek novelty, challenge, exploration, and learning even without external reward. Curiosity, in that sense, is not random distraction. It is one of the mind's purest signs that it is alive and reaching outward. The sixth sign is that you change your mind while thinking. This one is especially misunderstood because from the outside it can look like inconsistency, like hesitation, like not knowing what you believe. But sometimes what is really happening is much more intelligent than stubborn certainty. You're processing in real time. You see a nuance you missed 5 minutes ago. You notice a flaw in your own logic. You adjust, you refine, you let the better interpretation replace the older one. That is not mental weakness. That is flexibility. Cognitive flexibility is the ability to adjust thoughts and behavior in response to changing demands, and research links it to better adaptation, resilience, and everyday functioning. Rigid minds may look decisive, but flexible minds often see more. So if you do these things alone, if you sit with uncertainty, argue against yourself, observe your emotions, reinterpret your past, follow curiosity without reward, and change your mind mid-thought, then what you've called overthinking may not be overthinking at all. It may be evidence of a rarer cognitive style, a quieter one, a less performative one, a form of intelligence that doesn't always announce itself, because it does its deepest work in private. And maybe that's why you've felt different for so long. Not because something is wrong with you, but because your mind was never built for shallow processing. So the next time you catch yourself thinking deeply in silence, don't rush to diagnose it as a flaw. It may be one of the clearest signs that your intelligence was never ordinary, only private, only subtle, only easy to miss in a world that mistakes noise for depth. Which of these six do you relate to most?